everyone. Thank you so much for being here today. Well, my name is Lahari Chowtoori. I'm an open source TPM at AWS focusing on AI ML. Actually, talking about a very crucial topic in the open source, which we discuss a lot about. So before we dive into our topic, I do have a quick question for everyone. How many of you contributed to open source projects? Please raise your hands and keep those hands raised if the contributions that you made are code. Yeah, so there is clear distinction when it comes to open source between the code and the non-code contributions, and we'll be focusing on those hidden heroes who actually make the open source communities thrive. So that's all our topic is entirely about today. When we think about open source, coding often takes the center stage, but to make open source communities thrive, there are a lot more roles that are in play within the open source. So we'll talk about the real stories of the non-code contributions who have transformed the open source projects. Over the past few months, we have had the privilege of interviewing 18 seasoned open source folks who have contributed to open source through non-code contributions. Their journeys span from beginning of the open source to present day, which actually gives us a very unique perspective on the non-code contributions and how they actually shape open source. Among these, some of them are documentation pioneers, community builders, event managers, open source strategists, policy specialists, who have actually helped their projects thrive. I'm sure there are a lot more contributions that are not present on this slide, but we'll be discussing primarily about this because these are the different types of contributions that we have come across during our interviews. The importance of these type of contributions is way too big, but I'll just go briefly about them here on this slide, and then we'll go deep and further in the upcoming slides. It was actually noted that documentation is often the strong point of contact between the users and the project. Documentation is the one thing that actually helps people to adopt your project and also helps it very easy to make the transition into your project. And on the other hand, marketing specialists are the ones that actually tell the stories of your projects and actually take it to a wider audience. It's not just about the promotion, it's also making the technology accessible in a way that the users and the users of your project are actually able to understand what your project is trying to deliver. And they also try to build the communities around your project. And that's where the community builders come into the picture, where they create an environment where the collaboration actually thrives. And from organizing events to managing communications, they actually bring these individuals together and build these cohesive teams where everybody can work together. And research might be something that is not often heard in open source, but it has its own place in a way because it actually shapes the project direction through data and analysis. This also includes governance structures and also the studying the user needs and analyzing the project health, and also identifying the growth opportunities for your project specifically. Policy and strategy, on the other hand, ensures the sustainability of your project. This includes the funding models, long-term planning that keeps your project healthy and growing. And the center piece of our talk today are actually the designers. They are essential in open source because the code doesn't alone ensure the usability. The user experience is what actually determines whether your software is adoptable, intuitive, and as well as accessible at the same time. Each of these roles play a very significant role in the open source, and each requires skills that are beyond coding. Starting with the impact of the documentation, our research actually revealed that documentation as a very powerful entry point for anybody that is coming into the open source, from Apache to Python and read the docs. documentation has repeatedly emerged as a foundation for the project success. Eric from Read the Docs has emphasized that newcomers can actually start with documentation. It doesn't have to be just writing it, it can also be just reading the documentation that is related to the project that you want to start. Because for you to understand a project entirely, going through the existing documentation will help you the heart of the community than any other source that is available out there. And also, the work that Eric has done at Read the Docs, actually through translation and the localization work, has taken a lot of projects global. They just don't translate the words, they actually translate the context and also break down those cultural barriers across different projects. Marketing plays its own role within open source. One of the marketing specialists who has been in open source for almost 13 years has mentioned that the best technology in the world means nothing if a user can't find it or even understand the value of your project. They have transformed how these projects actually reach their audience, and they've also done significant work in driving the projects to vendor-neutral foundations. Organizing events is something that is taken very lightly, but this is where collaboration actually happens. This is where people come together. These kind of events actually create opportunities to build those relationships, build the trust that you need to have within a project, and also for finding mentors. When it comes to community building, Courtney from CircuitPython and Yuga from Apollo Community have actually done a very exemplary job. CircuitPython actually grew from 100 members to 35,000 members, and the Apollo grew from scratch to 100,000 members. All of this did not happen just through better code. It was actually through better community management. They have created structured onboarding programs, mentorship programs, and most importantly, an environment where any type of contribution was welcomed, regardless whether they coded or not. Though research sounds very academic, Kylian's work with scikit-learn has actually shown its impact. He had studied the funding models and also analyzed the community health and provided data that can actually help projects to make decisions. His research solved immediate problems and also created templates for the other projects to follow. Leadership in open source isn't limited to just technical expertise. Having non-code contributors in leadership positions has always shown that projects thrive when there are these people in the leadership positions. Our interviews revealed how marketing professionals have shaped project direction, research influenced funding models, program managers built sustainable communities, and also the policy experts guided the governance of the project. The designers we interviewed have contributed to major open source projects such as GNOME, GIMP, and FreeCAD by improving the user experience, system design, and as well as usability or function of it. Podman Desktop and the Fedora logo that you see today are designed by Mo, and GIMP icons and masket that you see are designed by Thomas. Their impact actually went beyond visuals. They brought user research into technical decision making, and they have influenced these projects in ways that don't show up in code metrics like how we see code metrics usually in projects. Through our research, we have identified common challenges that the non-code contributors usually face in open source. First, there is a technical barrier. Open source workflows are often built around tools like GitHub, and which are designed primarily for developers. Even creating a small documentation update requires navigating these technical systems, which is not always easier for the non-code contributors. Second is the recognition gap. While code contributions have clear metrics and the visibility, non-technical work often goes unnoticed or undervalued. This creates an unintended hierarchy within the projects, which is not healthy at times. And trust building takes longer comparatively for non code contributors than code contributors. Without visible code commits, establishing credibility requires longer time and presence and commitment to the project. And working with technical teams also present another hurdle because there are different vocabularies, different workflows, and the priorities of different work groups create communication gaps between the code and the non-code contributors. Finally, the cultural barriers always persisted. Many open source projects have ingrained technical cultures that can unintentionally exclude non-technical perspectives. Designers in the open source also had specific challenges when it came. When one of the designers that we have interviewed approached GIMP in the early 19s to contribute, they were just told that, oh, we do not need contributors, so you can leave. And this kind of rejection actually made it so difficult for them to actually come back into open source again. It took them 5 years almost to get back into open source again. But whereas the other designer actually acknowledged that being a white male student in a space full of similar people made his entry frictionless, but that's just the exception. It's not the rule, right? How many talented designers we might have lost just because they weren't received properly, or they did not have the persistence to try back again to get into open source, or the impact that they had with their first interaction was way too stronger. So always be friendly people. Also, design cannot be contributed casually like one line bug fix. It's a very systematic work that actually requires deep understanding of the entire stack. So being unfamiliar with the Git workflows can also be a blocker to understand the technical stack of the project that you want to contribute to. And also it is important to have clear contribution paths. Just like how you have a developer guide, you need something for designers as well. You need to make it specifically clear what kind of design contributions that you need for your project. And also both interviewees have suggested that you must use the software that you actually want to contribute to or you want to design for, because if you are not familiar with the software that you want to design, you'll just be pixel pushing. Non-code does not mean essentially non-technical. Design is essentially system thinking, so understanding databases, architecture, and trade-offs are essential. Without it, you're not actually designing. Like I said, you're just pixel pushing at this point. And also, every open source project's contribution infrastructure is basically built upon the code artifacts. But a designer can actually fundamentally shape the project or the product's direction and can never appear in a single metric. Thomas' contributions to GIMP icons and mascots and most contributions to Podman Desktop have improved the user experience of these projects, but these are invisible in the commit graphs. Despite all these challenges, our interviews have revealed remarkable successes that shows what's actually possible when projects embrace the non-code contributions. Rich Bowen's journey from documentation writer to Apache maintainer changed how the project approaches the accessibility, but it's more than one just success story. His work has also created templates for other projects. As he explained, documentation isn't just about writing, it's also about making the technology that you're building is accessible to everyone that needed it. The impact of community building, like we have already discussed, is clearly visible in the CircuitPython and the Apollo projects. Building the community is one thing, but also maintaining the sustainability of that community is the main thing. So they have done this through structured programs, mentorship programs, clear onboarding paths, and also maintaining these clear communication channels with the people that they have created this community. And also these successes share very common elements. We need to have the recognition systems that value the diverse contributions that your projects receive, but perhaps most importantly, they show that when these projects invest in the non-technical roles, the entire community benefits. We have also interviewed Brian Granger, one of the founders of the Jupiter Foundation. He told us that the code actually got them started, but it was actually the community that made them successful. This sentiment echoes across multiple open source projects. Technical excellence combined with the strong community is what builds a lasting impact. Well, designers had their own success stories. Though it was just 2 open source designers that we have interviewed, we should have interviewed more. The current Fedora logo and the Podman desktop that you see today are designed by Mo, and also the Thomas has contributed a long-term user experience improvements to GNOME and GIMP. They have also introduced transparent design processes within these projects. This has actually displayed if the projects included designers early in the project roadmaps, designers can actually shape how the projects will be adopted in the long term. We do have some practical recommendations from the interviewees that we have interviewed. So when somebody is new to open source, it could be any type of contribution. It doesn't have to be a design. It doesn't have to be marketing. Any type of contribution, there is a way to get started. First, look for projects that have clear non-code contribution paths. If a project have these guides already existing, that means they value the diverse skills that you are bringing. Fedora has been very successful in creating clear entry points for designers, artists, community builders, and even event managers. Documentation or community support is often a great entry point. Many projects desperately need this kind of help because they want their tools to be more understandable, and also they want to assist the new users. Also, on the other hand, it is not necessary to start with documentation. Like I said, you can also read the documentation and not write it initially. And also, don't underestimate the value of the community meetings. It's where you'll actually understand how the project is functioning and also find opportunities to contribute. And you can jump into discussions at any point. You do not have to contribute in the very initial stages. Jump into discussions on online forums, community meetings, even Discord or any other platforms. Your questions can actually arise ideas that they never had before too. I'd missed designers. So the one thing that the designers have stressed was you have to use the software to contribute to the design, and you need to use this software daily. And learning the basic Git workflows is actually very important to understand what the developers in your project are actually building on. And also try to understand the code base. Just because we are non-code, it doesn't mean that we are non-technical, because you need to understand at some point what your project is actually about. So try to understand the code base. There are various tools right now in the market and at our hand, so utilize this. Attending conferences helps you not only to network and also what's new in the space, especially to find a mentor. Both the interviewees have highly suggested finding a mentor if you're new to open source and if you're a designer specifically. The interview also had growth tactics. Now that you know how to get started, now it's important to build your presence in the open source. And how do we do that? You have to be consistent to the project that you want to contribute to. Regular participation, even in small ways, builds the trust and visibility for you in the project. Look for opportunities to collaborate across various teams within the project. This actually broadens your impact and also the understanding of the project. If you can, get involved in organizing community events. It is a very easy way for you to create value and also connect with the others in the project. And also, feel free to share knowledge and be ready to do that. It doesn't matter whether it is through writing or mentoring or answering questions. Your expertise could be helpful for somebody within the project. And designers. So, most of the designers come through traditional design programs, and showing your messy work is something that you're not all ready to. But when it comes to open source, it works entirely different. You have to show your messy work in the early stages. You need to ask for feedback publicly. This actually helps you to incorporate that feedback and also work with project since the beginning. So yeah, show that messy work in the beginning of your work itself. Now that we know how to get started and how to build presence, and now that you have had enough time within open source, now it is time to create your own path within open source. And to do that, you need to seek out projects that truly diverse different contributions, and look for communities where non-code contributions are celebrated and also actively recognized. You need to build relationships across teams because they might actually open doors to other opportunities for you. Importantly, document your impact. And also, this doesn't have to be just for the sake of your reputation. It could also actually help you to track the growth that you had within the project. And finally, share your journey. When you start talking about your experiences, you're not just building your reputation, it can actually create pathways for others to follow. Remember, and the most importantly, the one thing that we all have to remember is open source thrives on diversity of skills, perspectives, and the diverse contributions that we bring together. Our unique talents can actually make a difference regardless of whether we code or not. On the other hand, for the designers, you need to study the systems architecture. This is coming from seasoned open source designers. So there was a book that they actually suggested, Designing Data Intensive Applications, which is apparently a very book to teach you the trade-offs that directly impacts the user experience. And they've also mentioned that you need to collaborate with engineers more often within your projects. And also, the biggest historical barrier was depending on designers to implement and test ideas. The dependency is dissolving today. Designers can now generate prototypes, run user tests, gather data, and also present evidence backed proposals, all before a single developer can write code. The Penbot ecosystem is actually leading this already with MCP server integration, which is cool. So we all have specific action items for the project leaders and for the people who are coming to the open source initially, and also for the communities that are already part. So project leaders have the power to shape how non-code contributors engage within the community. Start by clear non-code contribution paths. We need to make those contribution paths as visible as the developer guidelines. And if a project doesn't have a clear README, what it is actually asking people to do, that means that's the first step that we are failing at. So make those READMEs as clear as possible. And we need to establish recognition systems regardless of the type of the contribution. Remember that the person who is improving your documentation is actually making your project accessible to a lot of people. And we need to create those welcoming communities. This means having structured onboarding, actually having a human who can interact with people and not point them to a wiki to find out about the project. Most importantly, we need to implement strong mentorship programs, and this has become significantly important given how the landscape in the open source is changing these days, and we need more maintainers, we need more maintainers than before. And so when you're welcoming these newcomers to your project, make sure that they find their place and also grow within the community. And when it comes to contributors, we need to start by choosing our own contribution area. look at the skills that you already possess. Is it writing? Is it marketing? Is it building communication channels, or is it building events? So find the interesting area that you want to contribute to, and then align what the project actually needs in those specific areas. And look for communities that welcome non-code contributions. The best project that makes this very explicit in these readmes are the ones that you should target. And remember that these small contributions matter. It doesn't have to be a one-time big effort. And projects actually recognize when you have been consistent and you are present for most of the time. And you need to build those relationships within the community as you contribute. And when it comes to the open source communities, which is all of us, so our role is actually to build the bridge between the technical and the non-technical audience. We need to help them, and they need to help us to understand how the project itself works. So creating structured programs can actually help all sorts of contributors within the project. And we need to celebrate diverse contributions publicly. Make it known that code isn't the only valuable input in your project. And today, it is like that. Code isn't anymore the most valuable commodity. It's the people within the community that are making the project more valuable. So, and support new contributors regardless of how they choose to contribute. And the future of open source basically depends on all of us to create more inclusive and welcoming spaces. Whether you are a project maintainer or a potential contributor or part of a broader open source community, we all have the power to make the difference. So use that power today. And there are specific action items for designers. The projects need to appoint people who actively follow up with newcomers, a human that can actually check, and we need clear documentation paths for onboarding. Just like how we have the documentation for developer guidelines, it needs to be clear enough for designers to know where they actually need to contribute, and proactively invite those designers into specific tasks. One designer's entire trajectory in a project changed when they were asked to design a logo for something. So make them feel welcome and also make them feel that they are actually involved within the project. Never dismiss a newcomer harshly. Some of them had this experience and it took them years to come back into open source. We might have a bad day, but it doesn't mean that we have to put it on the others. So yeah, both designers actually said the same thing. High trust environments produce high quality design and also a better code. Code of conduct and the respectful norms aren't just for performative reasons. They actually create the quality engineering environments. And build connections. Go to a conference, find a mentor. Neither designers had one, but they wished that they actually had one. So, and also share your unfinished work. Do not be shy about that. It doesn't have to be until that you finish it. It can be in the beginning stages, and it can actually help your project as well to understand what they actually need from you. So sharing the opinions could actually be very helpful for the projects. So to conclude it all, open source runs more than on code. It actually runs on people, the systems that we create, and the experiences that we create for the newcomers and for the existing contributors within the community. So let's embrace that and celebrate all types of contributions by supporting each other. I think that's all. Thank you.
Thank you, Lahari. Do we have some questions? Yes.
Yeah, thanks so much. I'm currently working on a new project playbook for our open source project to also include contributor paths outside of code contributions. And the challenge that I'm facing right now, and I wonder if you had any thoughts on how to actually design the onboarding paths for design contributions. Because just for background, we have a product for researchers, for academic researchers. So it's rather complex. It's unlikely that any designer has the need to use that every day, right? So I wonder if you have any thoughts on like how to design that onboarding experience.
Honestly, when it comes to specifically designers, I might not have the right source for that. But Chaos has actually done a great job on creating practitioner guides for non-code contributions, I guess, but I'm not sure whether they have one for design specifically. And the Turing Way has a great documentation on those. But if I come across one, I'll definitely let you know. But one specifically for design, does anybody know? Okay, that means we need to build one new one.
Okay, thank you. Do we have, yes, one more. Good. Sorry.
First of all, thank you really for your insights. It really matched with my experience getting into open source at the moment. I tried the approach with contribute what you use, and this was for the KDE desktop. And if it wasn't for the mentorship thing, like Andy really replied to me and we write in private, I probably would have dropped out, like you said. So for these projects which don't have a clear path at the moment, have you any experience how to establish a community around that designers are more welcomed and also that developers are searching actively for their advice instead of the developers feeling like being replaced in discussions about UI?
To reiterate that question, so how can we make designers important as the same as developers and also not replacing at the same time?
It's more about that a lot of times arguments start instead of working on solutions.
Okay. Do you think those arguments start because we are not including the developers in the beginning stages of design, or them not including designers in the beginning of the project roadmaps?
I think it's more about what makes sense to oneself, and then you have like completely two different viewpoints and you can't get on alignment.
Yeah, I think that's why that's one thing that I have heard too, because everybody comes with their own decisions to the table, and also the fact that we are not including them in the beginning stages of the design and the developers not including designers in the initial phases of the project roadmaps, what they actually want to build for the projects, that actually causes the hindrance too. I think we have to start working together from the beginning stages itself, because when we come to discussions after deciding what we actually want for ourselves, that definitely causes those hindrances. Thank you.
Okay, we have one more question over here. May I pass this on? Thank you.
Thank you. My question is, you have the standpoint from the open source community to the designers. Should the designers also reach more out to the open source community? I mean, there are also events for the UX community and design community to say also we as designers should more reach out to open source and to connect more from our places to your places.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not excluding designers from open source initially, because designers are also part of open source. But I think it is important for them to actually reach out to the developers within the community, and also the designers across the community. It doesn't have to be specifically to your project to find people that are working in the similar fields, right? So that could actually help you to find mentors, to also help you to carve a path within the open source for yourself and what projects that you actually want to contribute if you haven't started within the open source. Conferences, for example, meetups like this, I think I found it most valuable attending events or conferences, because that's where I found my mentors. And if you can actually find mentors, especially one-on-one mentorship, that is really valuable, because given how the landscape is currently within the open source, finding mentors is really important. And it could actually shape your direction within the open source and also maybe help you to reach the leadership positions within the specific open source projects one day.
All right. Then, thank you so much, Lahari. I will also give you, yes, applause, thank you. I will also give you